We actually want to get right to Kara Scannell. Kara, do we have a ruling in the Donald Trump civil fraud trial case?
Yeah, we do, Boris. We just got the ruling. It is 92 pages long, and I'm scanning through it right now. But when I'm looking at these numbers, the totals that the judge is ordering collectively in the case, so this will include all of the defendants, I'm getting a total of $362 million. And I'm just scrolling through this now. I can see that there's the dollar amount specific to Donald Trump. I'm going to use a calculator to do some rough math. It gets us to, for Donald Trump, about $354 million. That's for him, the company, the Trump Organization. So very close to what the New York Attorney General's office was seeking of $370 million. There's a lot of zeros here and a lot of other numbers, but roughly $354 million is the judgment against Donald Trump. The judge also found that his son, Eric Trump, is liable in the amount of $4 million. Donald Trump Jr. is liable in the amount of $4 million. And Alan Weisselberg, the former chief financial officer, is liable in the amount of $1 million. I haven't had a chance to read through the language of what the judge said here, but really this was about the money, because the judge had already found that Donald Trump, his sons, and Alan Weisselberg had engaged in fraud by issuing fraudulent financial statements, giving them to banks and insurers in order to obtain favorable rates. He ruled that before the trial, but we did go through a 3-month trial. The judge was looking to determine how much in ill-gotten gains, that's what this word of disgorgement means, the money that they benefited from. So now the judge issuing the significant ruling, more than $350 million against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization and against the sons. Now, I'm going to just see if I can quickly search to see what the judge said about any ban. That was the other outstanding question here. I'm not able to find that very quickly, but that is another issue that we're looking for here, of what the judge says about whether he's banning Trump from doing business or his sons. But this ruling, there was a question of whether the sons would be found to be liable, because the judge said at the end of the trial, during closing arguments, he asked the Attorney General's team if he said he wasn't sure there was sufficient evidence against the sons. This ruling here indicating that he believes that they did at least receive improper profits, and asking them to disgorge that as a result of this case. This is a significant win for the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. She'd been investigating this case ever since Michael Cohen testified before Congress, when he made this first allegation that Trump had inflated the value of properties to get better rates on loans and insurance, and to pay less in taxes. So she is now justified by this finding by the judge. And again, this was a judge trial. This was not a jury trial. So we've been waiting for Judge Arthur Engoron to issue this ruling. And now we have it. We still have to continue to read through it. Our team is doing that as I speak. But, a real significant win for the New York Attorney General, and a loss for Donald Trump in this case that goes to the heart of his reputation, the reputation that he was a successful real estate businessman, that he rode to the White House. The judge finding here that, there was fraud, there was liability, and saying that Trump needs to pay back more than $350 million. Boris, Brianna?
Yeah, it goes so much to his identity. This is clearly one of the cases, one of the legal issues that he's facing that bothers him the most here, as the Attorney General in New York had argued that it was the marketplace that was harmed here, and was seeking to recoup this disgorgement, or these ill-gotten gains. Let's go ahead and bring in Paula Reed, our chief legal correspondent, to talk about what she is seeing here, with our understanding here, Paula, that this is really kind of hot off the presses, this ruling.
Yes, the paper is still warm, but we're going through it right now. And as you and Kara were talking about, this case is so personal because it represents such a threat to Trump's business, his family business, and his identity. Remember, it was his identity as a businessman that brought him fame before he arrived at the White House. But in looking at the summary of this ruling, we see, in addition to the monetary penalties that Kara just laid out, they have found him liable for fraud, and they are going to continue the appointment of an independent monitor. So back in 2022, the judge installed a monitor to keep an eye on exactly what the Trump Organization was doing when it came to its business dealings. Now, among the things this monitor uncovered were a $48 million loan, for example, to the company itself, but there was no paperwork. They couldn't really find any information. That was just one thing that came up. Now, Trump lawyers have insisted, because they loaned the money to themselves. They didn't have the paperwork that they needed and insist that the monitor has found no fraud. Now, the judge also here orders the installation of an independent director of compliance. But I also want to note that they are saying here, the judge is saying that they're going to limit the defendant's right to conduct business in New York for a few years. Now, it's probably going to take a few minutes before we unpack exactly what that means. That does not appear to be an indefinite ban, the so-called corporate death penalty, but it does appear that the judge is going to put some restrictions on Trump and the Trump Organization's ability to do business in the state of New York. But let's go back to the idea of this independent director of compliance that appears to be maybe an executive level person who will ensure that they are being honest when evaluating their assets, when applying for insurance or loans from banks. Because, of course, that is what the judge here found Trump liable for last fall, before this trial started. They said, you are liable for fraud. They believe that he was not honest about the value of his assets because he was trying to get more favorable terms from banks, from insurance companies. Now, Trump's defense here was that these are subjective valuations and that ultimately there was no victim. And I want to note, when it comes to barring anyone from doing business in the state of New York, the so-called corporate death penalty is something that is rarely handed down in the state of New York, especially when there is no obvious victim. So we're going to keep reading to learn more about the limits that they're going to put on his ability to conduct business in New York over the next few years.
Paula, we'll let you get to it. Please stand by. We have a couple of important voices now on these developments. Renato Mariotti is with us, Norm Eisen as well as Doug Heye, looking at the political angle of this. First to you, Norm, just your reaction to this filing by Judge Engoron and the news from Paula that the Trump Organization will not face the corporate death penalty, though there will be some limits on their ability to do business in New York.
Boris, it's another devastating blow to the former president. Yesterday, there was the criminal case in New York State on allegations of fraud at the end of the 2016 election, that in the form of paying hush money. Now you get this civil fraud ruling in almost the full amount requested, over $360 million against Donald Trump, his businesses, associated persons, and entities. And it does have significant sanctions on Donald Trump and others, including his sons, continuing to do business. So Donald Trump cannot serve as an officer or director of a New York company for 3 years. He cannot take out loans for 3 years as part of the penalty. However, the one bright lining in here for Donald Trump is the judge rolls back his prior determination of removing the certificates to do business, the so-called corporate death penalty that would have shut these companies down. He had gotten appellate pushback. And of course, now all of this will be reviewed on appeal.
And I want to bring in Renato just sort of with a technical question, and Paula, jump in too if you know this. As we understand now that the judge has ordered Trump to pay nearly $355 million in this civil fraud trial in these ill-gotten gains, in disgorgement as it is called. What happens, because obviously he's appealing this, is there some kind of bond that is posted? What is the process for securing the money even as this appeals process continues? Does he have to do that?
So that's typically the case in most states, is that you do have to post a bond pending appeal. And that, often is something that you'll post a certain amount of capital. You won't post the entire amount in order to obtain that bond. Here I would expect, for example, there not only to be a bond that's posted, but of course, in the meantime, he's going to have to comply with some of the conditions that the judge has already imposed. So then that's going to limit his ability to continue to make money and run his business. I mean, as a practical matter, businesses have to be nimble. And having an independent compliance director and a monitor and so on is going to also, I would say, hamper his ability to be nimble and act in a way that he ordinarily might want to in his business. So I think it's a very significant impact on him in the short run, regardless of his financial situation. I don't see any way, despite Trump often spinning things as a win, I just don't see how any lawyer with a straight face could tell their client that this is a great result. This is a devastating result for Trump and his businesses.